And we are back for part 2 of this incredible interview with Dr. Rimka. So last week we covered the beginning of what is carnivore, how to do it, what does it mean. We talked about veganism, and now this week we are going into the biohacking and the weight loss and the fasting and that kind of thing. And I think it's going to be a great conversation. So as I said, I had to split this interview in half because it ended up being really long, but I think you're going to love it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you think of the video tonight. So let's get into the chat, ask your questions, and I will talk to you shortly. Welcome back to the Black Carnivore podcast. I am really excited to bring today's guest, Dr. Rimka, who is she's a functional medicine doctor. Well, I should have asked that. What kind of doctor are you?
That's so great. Actually, that's the actual typical response people have with me. Because I'm like, what is it exactly you do? And I can't really explain to my friends what it is you're doing to me. It's really cute that you did that, because I've had that same reaction for probably, even though I've been practicing over 20 years, I would say the last 10 years in particular, that's how people describe me. So I'm not real sure what you do. Again, it's still kind of hard to explain. So I'm actually a chiropractor, but I'm also a neurofeedback therapist. So I'm board certified in neurofeedback. I was a talk therapist before that. So I've had a long journey in healthcare. So I specialize in brain-based mental health disorders, but I do it from a very functional root cause approach, very opposite of Western medicine. So it is kind of like, what? So the kind of things I'm trained in and certified in are unusual. I usually am like hanging out in crowds of psychologists. That's most of my conferences, or orthomolecular psychiatrists. So a very unique kind of functional medicine.
Wow, that is really interesting. And how did you get there?
I went to school for that. So I was either debating after I graduated college, orthopedic surgery or child psychiatry. And there were 2 camps in my undergrad of my advisors. I was kind of like a triple major. My school didn't do like double majors, but all the psychology professors were leaning me toward child psychiatry. They're like, you're going to name your ticket. You're going to crush it. You make all this money. There's not many women. They were really like supportive of me as a young woman, kind of conquering the field. Then there's a whole nother side in the biology group with a lot of men that were like, I'm 5'11". I played college sports. And I'm like, you can be an orthopedic surgeon. Not many women can. You have to be big. You have to be strong. You could do it. And if you could, you're going to name your ticket. You're going to make a lot of money, right? And so I loved sports. I played sports. I loved biomechanics. I loved prosthetics and biomedical engineering. I was kind of studying that in school a lot, but I loved psychology. I just kept taking every course that was available to me. And it made sense eventually to be like, what am I really going to do with these passions that I have? I actually became pretty disgusted with Western medicine in college for my own sickness and their own lack of figuring out what was wrong with me. And I kind of had a existential spiritual crisis my junior year in college. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not sure I actually want to go to medical school, other than I'm trying to get out of the ghetto, basically. I need money. This is status. This is going to bring respect. This is going to bring money. This is going to bring prestige. I made a decision as a child. What do you want to be when you grow up? Doctor. I mean, there wasn't many choice. Like, what was going to get me out of the situation I was in and bring my mother out of that? I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to bring respect to the family. We're going to be somebody, So I kind of went, I'm not sure that's what I really want to do. Because if I'm just doing it for money, 8 years is stupid. Like, that's not a reason to become a physician. So anyway, all of that to say, and that took a year off to decide to delay medical school admission so I could be focused on what I was going to do. And I worked in a mental health hospital, and I was working with schizophrenics, placing them into group homes, trying to get them out of the hospital into group homes, into communities. And through that experience, I became incredibly disillusioned and disgusted with what I was seeing. And in a moment of, I was getting adjusted since I was 16 from a sports injury from a chiropractor, and I started seeing him again. And it was just in a moment with talking with him about that, I felt better. I said, what's the deal with this? Because it's not about the pain. I'm telling you, I'm mentally different when you're adjusting me. I see the world differently. I'm happier. I have more joy. I can push away depression. I don't understand what that has to do with what you're doing. And then he broke down neurology to me and explained the sensory motor systems to me. And in this aha moment, I said, wait, so that means the schizophrenics need to be adjusted. And he goes, yes, exactly. I said, I'm done. I'm it. That's it. That's what I need to do. Because seeing them in case study after case study in one file and one chart after the other, and what the medications were doing to them and the side effects of that. Then now we have tardive dyskinesia. Now we got to have this medicine for that. Now we have to this. And they were zombified. And then also seeing the horrors of what was done to them when you zombify a woman and what a low grade beta male will do to her in a hospital situation. It's disgusting. And the violence and what, you know what I mean? It just, everything about it. I said, this can't be right. This cannot be right. We're throwing people away and just locking them up and saying they can't be helped. What do you mean there's no cure? I don't buy that. So my whole journey to become a chiropractor was because I wanted to help people in a non-psychiatric drug approach. And in my naivete, I thought I could create an ordered nervous system alignment and everything would open up and they would no longer have mental health issues. And I learned along the way that I had to learn a lot of other things to help make that happen, bringing inflammation down and understanding the gut. And that's kind of where it all started.
Let me just make sure I understand. So you're saying that physical adjustments that you make in the body to the skeletal system actually makes physical change in the brain.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. I am so fascinated by that and really want to dive into that, but we probably shouldn't veer too far.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're talking about carnivore, but I do have one question. I have a friend who does what he says is neuro orthopedic massage, and basically kind of, it's not massage. She actually deals with the nerves and the way they communicate from the muscle to your brain.
The myotomes and the dermatomes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so whenever I go to him, it's like, he might tap on something or, like, I don't know. I mean, not even no kind of massage, but it makes a huge difference in the way my body operates. And I think it's fascinating and totally confusing.
Yeah. That's exactly. There's many ways to approach it, right? That's what Chinese medicine is trying to do. They're calling it, they're going with electrical qi energy to access brain changes. But I took it a step further and became board certified in neurofeedback. So I directly hook up EEG leads and use neurological caps. And I read electrical activity of the brain and I change the structure of the brain directly into the brain as well. So I approach it. I do brain therapies. I use sound. I use bone conduction. I use vagal conduction. I use electricity. I use a lot of devices. I use light to modulate brain activity and bring someone back into balance.
Okay. And so how does food play into that then? If, if you can do all of this stuff physically, why does it matter if we eat well?
Well, food is just slowed down light, right? You are just slowed down light. We're both just frequency that's slowed down in a way that we can see each other in a three-dimensional experience. But I am absorbing light and I'm giving off light right now. This is proven scientific fact. This is not woo-woo. This is why we can do things like tests, whether it's MRIs or ultrasounds or CT scans. We're using frequency and vibration to read things and understand things. So the mitochondria deep inside are really helping control this. So food is just captured light. And I'm really looking at a human system in terms of its light sound frequencies and how to bring it back into harmony where it's not resonant, where it's disharmonic and resonating where it doesn't make sense, and bringing it back into a beautiful symphony, let's say, right? Because if you have somebody in the orchestra that's off tune, you're like, the whole thing sounds horrible. And you get everybody back in line and all of a sudden it's stunning. Okay. And it's just, you get lost in how beautiful it is. Well, that's the human system. And when it comes to repairing the brain, which is an electromagnetic organ, it's electricity That's the spark. You are charging electricity, right? People kind of forget you are like Shazam. You are magical. You are creating electricity. We measure that. As soon as it's gone, we consider you dead. That's the marker of death in Western medicine. It's like, well, there's no more. It's a flat line. That means there's no electrical charge. That also creates magnetic pulse and also creates light waves. Why am I saying all that? If I don't have the right structure of parts to build the structure, I can't do anything. So it's like this, like how I explain people brain therapies when I do them. I said, oh, here's the thing. So I'm going to create new neural networks. I'm going to create whole new highways. Basically, let's say a person has attention problems. Like you have like a really small dirt road to that part of your brain that helps you focus, right? And you have a super highway. You've got like an 8-lane super highway with, high-speed train rail system that helps you go inside and daydream. And that's lovely to do that because we need to do that. It's a powerful tool. But what happens when you ask the brain to do something that has a small pathway, it says, screw it, it's too hard. I'm going to go do the big thing. This is really easy. So I teach it to ignore something and build a new highway. Well, to build a 6-lane highway in the brain, if I don't send workers out there and give them asphalt, concrete, tar, shovels, equipment, then they can't do their job. And for me, that's cholesterol, DHA, choline, B vitamins, right? All of the things that the brain needs. If I don't have enough of that stuff in there, then we can't build anything. And in fact, I could make you worse. I could damage you. It'd be like me training somebody for a marathon or a CrossFit who's actively anorexic. I could kill that person, right? So food, to create the brain state that we can fix it, make it work.
So where does something like fasting or restricting, your food in any way, for someone with a brain issue, where does that
it's incredibly helpful. Fasting is a major tool. I've been personally fasting, living a kind of a fasted lifestyle for at least 26 years, I think. Tons. So I've done hundreds I don't even know, I can't even keep track. Critically important. Again, we don't want, that's different than malnourishment and starvation, but fasting is an extraordinary tool to bring the brain into a ketotic state, bring up high levels of ketone bodies, and induce autophagy and apoptosis, which is cellular clean over and recycling and dangerous cell death. So with brain injuries and brain issues, ketosis is one of I've got to get brains in a ketogenic state, and fasting is a potent and fast way to get somebody there.
Okay. So I guess that means there's a line where fasting begins and then too much fasting or malnourishment begins.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I love that fasting is kind of taking off. I think women in particular can overdo it. What fasting is, it's a signal to the system that in general, if we go back to being, what does it mean to be human? And what does it mean to live primally? I think that for me, the majority of all health issues I see in all my patients stems from a disconnection to nature, a disconnected to a natural way of living. And that encompasses a lot of things. Food is a part of that, right? And so why I prefer a primal diet, an animal-based diet, is a natural human primal diet. That is just the way humans have been here for millions of years. It's the way we've been eating. It is not new. It is not fancy. There's nothing to me controversial about it. Anthropology has proven it left and right. It's a done deal. Now, we're brainwashed by propaganda and marketing that it's not. And people have been convinced that fake things made in a manufacturing plant based upon chemistry is actually better than foods that we've been eating for millions of years, is a different story. So one, I do want to feed the system. I want to bring nourishment into anybody's system first before I start leveraging fasting. But fasting was a normal part of of the cycle for humans. And it's typically should be seasonal. You would have the occasional, okay, the herd is gone. We're having a hard time finding some animals. We ran out of food. So you didn't eat for a day or two here and there while there was some hunting going on. Coming out of deep, deep winter, going into spring, there might have, probably almost every year, tribes were going through some little short seasonal fast, a 3 to 5 or 10-day fast, because there wasn't much food. They ran out of their salted cured meats and fish. And okay, so the term spring cleaning comes from the ancient tribal primal way of we fasted every spring just naturally. And there was your spring cleaning. So I'm not a huge fan of like people tracking fasting every day. I hate the term intermittent fasting because you've just turned normal eating into a fancy science term, like you should eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full and drink when you're thirsty, and you should sleep when you're tired. And if we were able to do this again, if we were in harmony with nature and not technology and disordered living so much, the signals would be very loud and be very clear, and it'd be really easy to understand. So fasting comes into it, but I'm cautious when I bring somebody into it. I want them stable. I got to look at eating disorder history. I have to look at, where are we in the state? So like say a patient comes in general, I don't allow anybody to stay in a standard American diet. If you come into me and you're there, fine. We're going to work our way through. I will not allow anybody to remain a patient with me if they aren't at least a pretty consistent paleo. That's a basic starting point. It can be kind of a modern cheating paleo. I don't care, but that's a basic starting point. And then from there, I have some people, autism families, I've got to move them GAPS diet. I have, MS patients, we might do something else, ulcerative colitis, this and that. But in general, we're going to be in that low carb, zero grain kind of paleo primal, taking away plants as needed based upon their specific case condition and their lifestyle and their desires. Like, I'm carnivore, not because plants hurt me. I've been like low carb keto for so long, 10 years or something like that, that when I was like carnivore and I'm like, yeah, I'll try that for 30 days. And it's like almost 4 years later. And I just simply do it because I hate cooking and it's so simple and I don't want to think about food, and I like all the things. And I'm like, I don't really like asparagus that much. I mean, I only ate the salad because I had all the creamy, cheesy stuff on it, like it. So, but I have patients that, of course, I was putting them on carnivore for years, but I didn't know I didn't know. It just became, they can't eat anything but this. This is the only thing that feels good, right? My MS or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. And it didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand why. I struggled with, they're not eating any vegetables. I mean, I'm sure this can't be good long-term, but like they feel great and they're off steroids. Like we're not using prednisone and they were in remission. So, and then I would try and they would hurt. I'd say, well, screw it. I'm like, well, just take a multivitamin. I just, I didn't know 5 years ago, like this was even my brain was like, I don't think this can be good. Are we missing something? I know now more, I bring more organs into it. And I bring more minerals into it to make sure I have them covered. But I don't in any way, shape, or form now think I understand a carnivore diet can be completely packed with everything you need. And some of my patients, they're still doing some fruits. I do. Then I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to stay this way. But I want them in season and I want them local. I said, so if it's not growing within 25 miles of you, you can't have it. And that's not in a greenhouse. That's not under some hydroponic situations. I want to know if it can grow near you. Great. So if you're in the Caribbean and you're out in the sun and there's mangoes growing and you want to eat them, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not dogmatic with how I do it, but that mango in England in January is such a disordered, disconnection from nature that the body is completely confused by that signal of food, which is a signal of light to that human system, and it can't process it correctly. So I do like fasting, but I am mindful that people can overdo it. I never want a carnivore starting to fast. I mean, when I take people, when they begin, I'm like, please throw out all of that. I don't know if because they're so used to like dieting women or whatever. I'm like, no. We're going to eat. Like, you're going to learn to eat again. And it's because I'm trying to, if they've done a lot of dieting and a lot of fasting, trying to lose weight or whatever, their brain has gone into, survival. It's gone into famine. It's gone into war. We're either at war or we're in a famine. It's real bad times. And so what I want to do initially is nourish them so much that the brain says, life is so good. Everything is so safe. We're clearly in abundance. Clearly there's warriors on standby. Clearly everything's fine. So you know what? I'm going to like boost up my hormones. I'm going to release a lot of eggs. I'm going to be super fertile. And I'm going to increase my metabolism because I don't need to hold on to this fat because we don't need it because there's plenty. That's the beginning of low carb for me. And I transition people. I don't want fasting initially because I'm trying to create that neurological state to turn on the way the metabolic system can work by turning fear in the brain off.
Mm-hmm. I know. I think that I don't know. Fasting is just so triggering for me. And
is it? Yeah.
Yeah. I like I can do it, but then the after effects, the days, afterwards, it's just, I want to eat so much more. And
you lost a lot of weight, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like 80 pounds, right? Or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's different, right? So you do have a different, your adipose tissues are going to respond a little bit differently, your hormonal system a little bit differently. I don't think you need to fast. I would probably work with somebody like you, and the data is real clear on a one time a year, a 3 to 5 day fast, and what that can do, like for longevity and cancer, and it's extraordinary. That's one time a year. Walter Longo has the greatest research on this, and he does even the fasting mimicking diet. 500 calories a day for those 5 days will give you all the same results. So you could be doing different broths and kind of these low calorie soups. So if you just still need to have the oral pleasure of something happening, I mean, because there is that. The longest fast I ever did was like 13 days or something like that. And I just broke it because I was bored. I wasn't hungry. I was like, I just need to choose something. I can't handle this anymore. And I just grabbed some nuts and I was like, oh my God, it's so great. And that was purely emotional and psychological, that I was like, I don't know, because I was still around everybody eating all the time and all that kind of stuff, right? So right. Yeah, you don't need to do a lot. You don't, that's kind of, I see a lot of the fasting, and I love like Dr. Jason Fung and the obesity code kind of thing, and the alternate day fasting, and people like that. There's different systems that work for different people. That works really well for certain people, and it helps give them freedom. But if you know it doesn't work for your psyche, please know it's not necessary. And I would work that person into into occasional 24-hour, and really look at how you're breaking the fast. It might be how you're breaking it that is a little bit more of a problem. But yeah, you don't need to do a ton of it, actually. One time a year. That's what I tell my patients. Once I get them stable, I'm like, I encourage you to do one fast a year. If you like it and you enjoy it and it brings you mental clarity and improves your performance, and you want to do it more often, and when you're connected to yourself and your intuition tells you, I need to not eat. Great. But if that's not what yours tells you, then you don't need to do it.
Mm. And are there the benefits that come from fasting? I mean, do those come through eating a carnivore diet, like the autophagy and all the other stuff that everybody always talks about?
Yeah, well, you're always trying to do autophagy. Your body should always be recycling and apoptosis and killing cells that are all over the place. The more you eat, the less it'll be doing it. So we aren't meant to eat super frequently, right? So if a person is eating 6 times a day, they're going to be a little bit different than the person who's eating twice a day. Now, and please hear what I'm saying, I don't think everybody needs to be eating one meal a day by any means, because your system is going to change depending on the heat outside, the cold outside, your activity level, your period, where you are in your cycle. I think women, I'm a cycling woman, and I eat completely differently the week before I start my period than I do when I'm on my period. I have, like, women need to respect that. If you're hungrier, eat more. Your body's trying to make more progesterone. It wants more food for a reason. Okay. So it's an interesting balance of, knowing when to eat, when to fast. And I just think I'm glad it's there, but you are always doing it. Is it the same to eat carnivore as fasting? No, it's not as strong of a benefit. Fasting is in and of itself is pure rest. Your digestive system is resting but you fast every night. You know what I'm saying? So when you stop eating, you go to bed and then you eat again, you are fasting every single day. And if depending on the poisons and stressors that come into your system, that may well be all you need and enough for you. But true, restricted eating for extended period of time actually is incredibly stunning on the human system. I think that's why in primal tribes, it was just put into the cycle of how we lived, and no one was thinking about it. No one was part of a challenge. No one was in a group support. No one was doing it. It wasn't an app telling them, right? It was just how it was. And they knew, okay, food is coming, and they would, use different plants to get them through it. They would chew, if you had cocaine leaves around and you needed to chew, those men were chewing those. They were. No, this is true. They would get the pain, appetite reduction, pain and focus, so they could go hunt. And they could keep going, because they had to keep going real far to try to find that meat and carry it all the way back, So yeah. I mean, we know how to do things. There's a reason there's all these different plants that have all these kind of mood altering capabilities, and we use them and leverage them. Medicine women, we're real
guess
smart.
we have a long history of finding those things. But I read even elephants look for fermented fruits and stuff to get them a little bit drunk.
Yeah, monkeys, and the chimp, they know. They're like, oh, okay, they can smell that alcohol. They're like, yeah, boo. I do like fasting. Again, I think carnivores need to fast a lot less than a lot of other people, because you're getting less damage, right? You have every single day, there's less damage to your system, because the plants and the carbs and the grains are toxic, and that's causing so much damage. And if you don't keep damaging your system, it has a lot of energy to go in there and do autophagy, right? So, yeah.
Okay. And so, thinking off of that, like, what do you think of protein sparing modified fasts? Because that's become, pretty popular in the carnivore community.
That's Maria Emmerich's thing, right?
Well, I mean, it's been around a long time, but yeah, she.
I'm not really familiar with it. I'm not really familiar with it. Yeah, I don't like kind of fatty, gimmicky. I don't like things that have a book. If a book is telling you how to do it, I don't think you need it. Like, what do you think about this diet or this thing? Why? It's not human. I mean, if the lion doesn't need to read a book to know how to eat, why do we? So I looked, what is the Hunza tribe in Pakistan? What are the Altaians with the Yakuts in Siberia? What are they doing? They don't use a book. They don't need instructions. They don't count anything. They're just eating the food available to them. And it is always in the 70 to 100% animal based. I mean, several of those I said are 100%, but they're carnivores. The two tribes that are the oldest groups living on Earth, nobody talks about these centenarians. Nobody. And it makes total sense, because it goes against the agenda of the longevity group. So they want to talk about and say, oh, blue zones, and they're, a lot of vegetables. No, the Altaians and the Yakutians that are in Siberia, Russia, live to 140. Women get pregnant in their 60s naturally, 100% carnivore. period.
Wow.
I live in Siberia.
140?
Yep. But it's Russian, so nobody knows about it. See, the Russia doesn't release information. This stuff just became declassified in the last like 20 years when the wall came down, when Gorbachev and the whole thing, the Soviet Union, whatever, broke apart. Right. So I've just been learning a lot about this, and it's still like Russia doesn't share. They study what they want to make their people superhumans. They didn't share all their research. So yeah, Tomsk University studied all of this. They studied that group for 10 years, and they understand the big deal of what it is. And it's related to deuterium, which I think is one of the major reasons people do so well on carnivore diets. Is it's a low deuterium diet, and you're deuterium depleting. And deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen that works like a toxin in our body, and it breaks our mitochondria, and it makes our mitochondria not work. So it breaks down our energy, and it lowers mental function. It's actually connected to depression in the serotonin mechanism. So if you have high deuterium in your body, nothing is going to work right. And you're going to have more brain issues. You're going to have more energy issues, sickness, and super high in starches and sugars. And the lowest is in animal fat. So it's just one more piece of evidence that's very clear that the proper human diet, like Ken Berry, that's the greatest term ever, really like, yeah, it's so basic. It's the proper human diet, is a true primal ketogenic animal-based diet. Lots of meat. The only problem I have with carnivores, let me tell you, in the community right now, is it's a really lacking the balance of understanding primal, right? That you need bone marrow, bones, organs, that's the one thing. It's because it's hard for us in our city minds to wrap our heads around like eating brains. It's like, what? Like I haven't done it yet. And I tell people to do it. I tell people to do it every day. I'm like, well, this is how we did it. Brain, the brain is 20% bone marrow. I mean, you want healthy brains, you eat brains. Makes total sense. You want good liver, you eat liver. You want a good heart, you eat heart. This is what every ancient, medicine woman, shaman, as well as Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, anything. That's, you treat like with like. That's how you get it better. But we've stopped eating all of those things, and everybody just wants to talk about bacon.
I do encourage people to, to ease their way into organ meat. I mean, liver and kidney can be a tough sell, but like bone marrow is literally the most delicious thing in the world, and very nutritious. So I don't know. I think that's an easy way to start. And then, fat itself is an organ, right? So, yeah. Okay. I can't imagine having a baby at 60.
I know, right? Sure, but if you're living to be 100, if you're living to be 140, it really is like now. I mean, it's not like all the women are pregnant at 60.
Yeah.
I have friends who are trying to get pregnant at 40, 42. I mean, I'm 48 and I'm like, I'm not trying to do any of that. I'm like, I my son is 15. I can't imagine having so I was old enough when I had him.
Dealing with a teenager at 75 cannot be fun.
And but I mean, that's not old to them. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. That's not even like midlife. If you're living to 135, 140, they're living 4 times longer than the rest of the Russians. They're 4 times longer than any of their other centenarians. It's a very unique group. And it's funny, everybody just talks about deuterium, and I bet that is the answer, but they're not also saying they're carnivore. See, nobody talks about that in the longevity. They you see that they're carnivores, right?
Yeah.
Literally, I'm the only person who's ever pointed it out.
Okay.
Weird. It's interesting. There's a lot of bias against admitting primal animal-based carnivore ways of eating is healthy. Like there's so much bias in science and they don't even know it's there. You know what I mean? They even say what they say is these people are not living healthy. They don't even eat vegetables. They don't eat any vegetables. That's what they say. And I'm like, oh, you're cute. That's why Vegetables aren't good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked about deuterium much on my channel, but I have seen like some of the interviews where people are talking about it. I've watched a few of Jack Cruise's videos, but that was something that kind of went over my head, and then I just was kind of like, I don't know how we reduce it other than changing our diet, but it's in water. I mean, it's in everything, so.
I know it's overwhelming. You can lower it. So the same ways that I recommend people to be healthy in general, right? So one, you want to stop ingesting it, right? And so that's just a ketovore, primal, grass-fed, what the animal really eats kind of a diet, extremely low in plants, particularly fruit. So those are the highest offenders in deuterium content. Plants so we have a lot of mechanisms where we're trying to push deuterium out of our system, and we work really hard to do that. We have a lot of elegant systems to deplete ourselves, and so do plants, and they put it all in the seeds and the fruit. So the highest deuterium is going to be seeds, nuts, and fruits, right? And the stems.
Great. So all the nuts I used to eat and all of that stuff.
All these superfoods, right? The plant, the leaves themselves don't have as much, but so it's naturally present, right? But because of the geographic change of the climate on Earth, was a sharp increase in deuterium about 12,500 years ago, 13,000, with a big cataclysm that we had. And so it probably, because it melted, more ice, and it released more deuterium onto the Earth. So now we're sitting at about, the water is roughly, the ocean's 155 parts per million. Most drinking water is 150 parts per million. Now, but these Siberian people, the Altaians, Yakutians, and the Hunza tribe of Pakistan, their water's 130 and 134 respectively. Antarctica, the water's 89 parts per million deuterium. So there's a drastic difference. Some spring water here in America, Colorado and other places, you can test it. They're sitting at like 135, 140. That's a huge difference in your exposure. So one, exposing yourself to less in your diet. If you can find water that's low in deuterium, that's great. There's lots of natural substances around. Good luck with that. Mine is 151. I tested it and I'm like, darn it. I do drink deuterium. You can buy deuterium depleted water. It is a big investment. There's no countertop machine to make it yet. As soon as that happens, it's going to be a longevity game changer. But sweating, sunlight, so red panels, you can see that one right there. So red light therapy is just a form of sunlight. Basically, you're trying to extract some of the sunlight and make it really strong. Breathing, so exercise and doing breath work, all of those things increase the body's depletion of deuterium and help you get it out of your system. So, it's hard. You're not going to be drinking water that's 150 parts and then get yourself down to 120 with those things, but you can certainly get yourself down to 140, 142. And by doing that, you'll keep more mitochondria alive. It breaks mitochondria. It breaks cell membranes. It does several things, but if you just look at it, like, it literally breaks the motors inside mitochondria. It's too big and it breaks. We have motors inside of us, little machines. They're not human. So I'm not sure what they are. I'm pretty sure they're alien at this point. But deuterium breaks them. And the more of those you break, the sicker you're going to get. You can't heal, you can't repair. That's what aging really is. So yeah, it's a little complicated. There are solutions to it now. I didn't used to talk about it years ago either. But I really, Phil Escott and I had several conversations about it years ago with this. We're like, is all the benefits of deuterium, carnivore, is it just about deuterium? Like, I wonder how much of it is that. I think it's twofold. I think it's that safety signal I told you about. Like, it turns off the famine and war signal in the brain, and it nourishment. You have suddenly everything that brain needs. It can heal and repair itself. It can take down inflammation, and it turns off the signal. It says, oh, it activates a part of the brain. You can see in my hand, like, this is the emotional center, and this part here on top is the cortex. This lives on sugar. and this lives on ketones. So if you always just have a ton of carbs and you don't go into ketosis every night and do what you're supposed to, if you eat a lot of carbs, you can't. You're activating the more emotional limbic reactive part of your brain, and you have a hard time bringing the cortex, which is logical thinking, compassion, empathy, altruism as well. So you lose executive function and you lose compassion and empathy with other humans by not being ketogenic. It actually makes you a more compassionate, kind person. And I feel very confident in the neurophysiology of saying that. So it's, dare we say, why sometimes we see the most violent people on social media in our world are the vegans, you know, because this is where they're operating from. And it's very hard to bring this part of the brain on board, you know. So I feel bad that they don't have the ketones and the ketogenic way of bringing that. I used to live there. I was a vegan for 12 years. So I know that suffering and that pain, and you don't want to be like that. It's just the brain is being hijacked by abnormal physiology. So it does that, and then it lowers the deuterium, which does the same thing. It makes the brain calm. It makes it very stable, just functioning really well, and emotionally and cognitively very powerful. So
yeah, I definitely feel like carnivore is just like a game changer for the brain. And I feel like I do better when I'm eating high fat and, you know, and a lot of fat. And so when I do try doing the protein sparing modified fast, but again, there's always like there's a rebound. And
what's the gist with that thing? What is the gist with it? What is it?
Well, I mean, basically, you're supposed to eat as low of fat as possible so that, you're eating enough protein to do whatever your body needs, no carbs or minimal carbs, and then just enough fat to, keep your system operating, but basically forcing your body to go to your body fat for energy.
Oh, okay.
That's the idea.
Okay.
Whether that actually is what's happening in an individual person, I think is the question. And I think for me anyway, I think my body's just not willing to give up all that fat. And so I have that gap there where I'm not getting enough energy, or, whatever the fat's doing in my brain or whatnot, it's not getting it. And so, I'm more irritable. I did it for a while, for a couple of weeks, at the beginning of my carnivore journey. And I didn't even really notice it, but I just became more and more depressed. And then one day I happened to eat some short ribs, and it was all of a sudden, within 20 minutes, the skies open, angels were singing. I mean, I just felt joy.
Yeah.
But for no reason. I mean, nothing changed. And so, I know it was really it was just about the fat for me.
Yeah.
So,
and there's slight, again, there's slight genetic differences that each of us, I don't like high fat. It doesn't make me feel good. Right. So I'm a person that chooses much leaner cuts of meat. I've done that kind of experiment of going, because I've been doing this so long, with pretty ketogenic, and I actually gained weight. I was like, okay, that didn't work out real great going that high fat, my body couldn't process that much. And so again, I don't follow that, protein sparing, modifying, whatever. I don't know what that is, but if people are trying to,
I should say it is super low fat. So
okay.
what Maria Emmerich is saying, Emmerich is saying that you have to get about 30 grams of fat a day. So that's super, super low. So that's different. From people
that's really hard.
Right. That's different from someone who prefers a New York strip versus a ribeye. That's, a lower fat and a higher fat.
How do you even do that? Are you just eating chicken?
Fish, chicken, egg whites. I London broil, I prefer beef. So I'm just always going to choose that. So London broil or New York strip, where I make sure to cut off the fat cap.
Yeah. Now, again, when someone's trying to lose weight, I don't push a lot of fat, because you should be eating the fat on your ass. I'm like, if you need to eat fat, you should be eating the fat in your belly and your ass and everything else, right? So it could be a number of things, whether you just that's really low fat. That's kind of crazy to me, but that your desire for fat is high, like you need a higher percentage in your diet to be optimized. And that's just kind of genetic predisposition. Mine's a little bit lower. Or your metabolic set point being that you were obese for a long time, right? It takes the body to change that thermostat of what's normal. Like, okay, 200 pounds, that's okay, now it's 185. And then for it to stay there and be really comfortable, then it takes a while to get it to say, okay, I'm good being 130 pounds. And it's really hard. It's going to bust its butt to stay there for you. When people lose weight often too fast, it says, okay, that's great, but this ain't your normal weight, mama. So I'm going to slow the metabolism because I got to pack pounds to get back, look at Oprah, right? It's going to keep doing whatever to get back to that set point. So that's why doing it in a slower way. So probably a couple things why it's tough for you to go that low. Cause your body's like, I can't go into these fat stores like this because, you know what I mean? Where it's with its set point, like, that's not going to work. But I know what you mean. I'm trying to add more fish. And I ate last night for dinner. And a few hours later, I'm like, okay, I'm starving. I'm like, okay, like that's the problem. I have to eat so much, but I think that's another problem. There's not enough DHA, a lot of omega-3 problems in the carnivore community. I'm like, okay, I did my labs. I'm like, God, my little experiment of no fish didn't work great for me. So I got to bring it back on board, but I'm figuring out for me, I need to always do like surf and turf, right? So if I have steak with something, I'm satisfied. But lately I've been just doing these fatty fishes and like, it's like, I'm like, okay, that was a snack. And I mean, what am I going to eat? Like $80 worth of Chilean sea bass for dinner? You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't eat like this much sea bass. It's so expensive. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I will go lower fat with some people to lose weight. I mean, that's their goal. And we have to push their system. Their fat stores are like a padlocked deep freezer. They don't know how to access. And it does take time, right? So it could be your system needs a little help still to go into deeper ketosis, or it just likes where it's at. And it's like, I don't need to lose anymore. And I'm not doing that. I mean, it could be as simple as that. Yeah. Were you trying to lose weight when you did it?
Well, in the beginning I was,
okay.
But now I'm, just trying it because everyone is and seeing what it's about. And,
yes. Yeah. I never know what everyone's doing. I never know I'm like, who, what? I get questions about Ray Pete. I go, I don't know who he is. I could care less. I don't want to know the fad. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah. Well, I do think, and I'm always thinking about how to optimize my, my brain. But I do think that after, years, decades of like dieting and, I used to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol and never sleep and, and eat terribly. Like I did all the things. So I'm trying to think about how I can repair my brain if it's possible.
If it's possible. Yes.
I'm certain I'm addicted to sugar and in a physical way. So, I don't know what can be done to repair the, my brain, my reward center.
Everything can be done. That's all. I mean, that's kind of be hard for me to rattle off like this, but that can all be corrected.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the sugar addiction, there's a lot of people in our community, in the Black carnivore community, who recognize that they have, trouble with sugar or that they are sugar addicts. For some people, that's what drives them to carnivore, because it's really the only way to kind of get those cravings under control. I always
extremely effective. It's extremely effective for anybody having any craving, addiction, sugar, alcohol. This I think is the most therapeutic way to approach it, because moderation, I want to punch people in the face when they say that, like everything in moderation. I'm like, really? Have you met a crack addict? Because that doesn't work in moderation, and nor does sugar. So, I know there's occasional recreational cocaine users. I know those people exist, but I also know somebody like will sniff it across the room and then they're going to be in a crack house. I grew up in Detroit, so crack was a big thing. So, it's tough. So I love it for the sugar addiction. I'm very kind of similar. I can't tolerate a lot. Like people who can have a bite of cake. Oh, I'm good. I just had a bite. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
I
not.
don't know why you would have just a bite.
I'm kind of like, it's always men. I'm always like, good for you and your lack of ovaries. But but I'm a carnivore and I ovulate and I'm able to tolerate a little bit. I have chocolate every month. I do. And I let my patients, women, so there's a reason, dark, incredibly low sugar, 85% and 90% chocolate. You really can't eat a whole bunch of it. It's like, okay, that's about, it's not sweet, but it satisfies that hit I'm looking for right before my period every month. So I'll go, I fight it. I just, and I don't feel guilty. So, you learn to work with the rhythm of what works for what your body can tolerate. And some people can do that moderation thing. And if you cannot, it's okay. This is a beautiful solution. Carnivore is perfect. I think keto, people fall off real quickly. Like I'll have women that'll do really great. Oh, I was doing so great. And then I'm like, well, what happened? Well, I just started to try that. And then I'm like, so it just led to cupcakes? And they're like, yeah, pretty much. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. I know cucumbers can lead to cupcakes. And that's hard for some people to believe, but it can. It really can. So.
Well, I kind of wonder that, so many people are, coming from a diet of deprivation and, restriction. And so when they get to carnivore, they haven't let go, fundamentally, like in the back of their minds, of this need to control how much they eat. And so I think that they don't eat enough. And so I hear people say they say I wasn't hungry, and then I was watching TV and all of a sudden I found myself in the kitchen and I ate everything. And a lot of times I think you were hungry. You just were trying to restrict how much you were eating, and and by the end of the evening, like, you were still hungry, and you just and so you went in, and then that's what was kind of driving that. So I really do encourage people to eat enough, whatever, and that may be more than you think, or that you think is acceptable. I mean, I remember when I started, I was like 2 pounds of meat. That is crazy. Who can eat that in a day? And now, that's kind
of not a lot, actually. I mean, really when people, they don't understand that when they look at what they're eating. And I'm not a calories in, calories out person, but when you look at what they're eating and you say, well, this is the calories of that. And then you look at the meat and you go, here's the calories of this. Calories of meat is so low compared to what the carbs calories are, right? And how much of that you can eat. And it's this delusion. It's really propaganda marketing. It's just lies. It's just lies from the TV and the doctor, the AMA and Heart Association. They've been lying for decades. And my frustration is why people don't know that, why they've lied to you 3 times. I mean, once you catch a liar, why do you keep believing them? But that they think the meat is fattening, and most people think that means calories, right? They think, oh, you're going to get so fat. And I'm like, you do know this whole thing is like 200 calories, right? Like it's 200-300 versus their pizza that they're eating. They're going to have 5 slices. They're going to have like 2,000 calories. It's a very, very different thing. And you eat so much because it's not satisfying, so I absolutely agree. I typically, when people go carnivore with me, I make them eat 3 times a day. And that's a shock to some people because they've been coming from OMAD or like fasting. I'm like, yeah, we're going to change all of that. And they're really a little bit like, what? I'm like, how am I going to get 130 grams of protein into you, 120, 130, 150, depending on how much they want to weigh. You guys, how am I going to do that in one meal? And you're losing out signals of building muscle by doing that. You can tell your body to make muscle by lifting weights, resistance training, and by eating meat. I mean, so I just leverage it. And like you guys know, it's like you're lifting weights when you eat that steak, right? And women are like, really? I'm like, yeah. And I get them strong enough that they can go lift weights. So, because I think that's an important part of, you're eating all this. You should have been hunting to go get that meat, pumpkin. You know what I mean? Like not having it delivered to your front door on dry ice the way I get it delivered, right? I didn't do any effort to get that grass-fed meat. We normally would have put in work and burned a lot of energy and then had this great return on investment from doing it, right? So that's part of the issue too. But yeah, people have to eat more. I usually find women are not eating anywhere near enough. And it's when they, even if it's not carnivore, just weight loss in general, I'm like, you're not eating enough. And I start making them eat more and they're nervous and then they start losing weight. I'm like, right, because you've been giving your body a famine signal. So it just slows down its when it's no food, that's its job, to slow metabolism and pack on fat. It's brilliant. Your body's not stupid. It can't keep, like it's doing it, it's saving your life. So if you don't show it that it's, abundance, it will just, remain slow. So yeah, I do feed them more and I don't want fasting in the beginning because it's a lot of disordered physiology you're usually trying to overcome, right? Carb addictions and cravings and emotional food issues. So it's a lot. Yeah. But it's easy. If people, if you, and I do use bacon, like we talked about, I joked, but I'm like, just make a pack of bacon in the morning, you guys. And because it's a great way to get salt into them, because that's a huge problem is salt. Even I went through that. Like I could not get, like how much salt we really need. I couldn't salt my food. I don't like it that salty. So I really do just have to keep like drinking it down, like supplementing salt. And that's a thing that I think is a failure when people are having a hard time. It's really salt because we aren't eating bones and marrow and blood the way we would in a more primal, right? Which is full of salt. It's all electrolytes. Yeah,
I think I struggled with that in the beginning, but then my taste buds, adjusted. So now I think if other people ate what I eat, they would be like, "Oh my God, this has so much salt in it."
Yeah.
But that's and I found too, like the first time I went to keto, I did Atkins back in the 90s, and I was like, "Oh my God, how am I going to eat a hamburger with no ketchup?" Like, these things go together. And so I started adding like a lot more salt to the hamburger. And then I was like, oh, like I didn't eat ketchup. It was just the salt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And salt brings out so much flavor, I mean, really, salt and butter is like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I understand why my mom's cooking. She used to always, when I was younger, say, just get out of this kitchen. When I was in college and I was trying to, loaf in the fat, that's when I was brainwashed with that too. Like that was bad for you. She's like, you just need to get out of this kitchen because you don't need to know what's happening right now. And I was like, Thanksgiving. And I was like, you put a whole stick in there? She's like, baby, get out of this kitchen. You are not going to want to see what I'm doing with the candied yams and all this stuff, right? Just pounds of butter, just sticks and sticks and sticks. She's like, and I look at it now and I can eat raw butter. I've done all that crazy butter fasting, but when I first, I'm like, butter is delicious, like real butter, like it's sweet and creamy with the salt. And you're like, wow, and that would have sounded so crazy to me 20 years ago. But yes, you're right. The taste, you change, our taste buds, your taste buds and my taste buds were perverted. and they were hypersensitive and overly done. And so you no longer could taste what real sweetness was and real taste. And so if you blow out the sweet taste with something that's, 100 times sweeter than anything found in nature, like high fructose corn syrup, well, of course, nothing is going to taste right to you after that. Right. So there is time that you have to, the body goes through removing that perversion of not being able to taste things right, smell things right. And now real things are like, wow, well, this is actually delicious. And it does happen. It's kind of shocking where I was the same way, where I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. And like liver, have you tried the carnivore crisps? Have you tried that? Oh my God. So the liver chips, right? The first time I had one, I was like, oh, I mean, I don't know about this, but I ate it. Second day, tried it again. I'm like, well, it's still not, this is not good. Third day, I was like, this is delicious. What the hell was I talking about a couple days? I mean, I don't understand. Like, why did this get so good? So weird, right? I mean, it was just in 3 times, the drastic change in how it tasted to me was extraordinary. Right. So like now I like it. And I'm like, this is good. And when I suggest it to people and I tell them how good it is, they're like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's going to take 3 to 5 times. Just keep doing it and it'll change. Now, it won't probably taste good to you if you just ate Oreos. I mean, that probably isn't going to work. But, for my carnivores, I do struggle to get the organs going. So we do primal blends, I have to get it into hamburgers form or whatever. I'm the same way. I mean, I have some liver and some heart steak in my freezer. I'm a little intimidated to know what to do. I'm like, well, I got it.
Pate is kind of the only thing I can do with liver. Okay. And when I add in a lot of fat, then I think it's quite tasty and it makes a great dip. But mostly I buy liver and I dehydrate it to make snacks for my dog. And man, the dogs at the park and she just love liver specifically. Yeah.
My dog is crazy for it. I mean, when I'm eating it, I mean, I have to share it with him. Yeah, he goes nuts for it. I like the crisps. I think the crisps are really good. I mean, and that's what I ate today was the crisps with cheese and just put it in the toaster oven for 10 minutes. But it's a simple thing.
I'm not going to share the crisps with my dog. I was supposed to do actually an ad. I did get the carnivore
dog ones.
Dogs, yes. And they were great. They were a hit. So I encourage you all who are watching to go to the description. There you can find my affiliate code, order them. The dogs love them. And so.
Yeah, they're good stuff. They're good. So brainandbodysolutions.com. I have courses. I do private sessions. I have a retreat. I have a carnivore safari coming up in South Africa next year.